The first scream cut through the air just as the sun dipped behind the tree line. "Call the cops. He's still there." The voice came from across the lake, sharp and panicked, bouncing off the still water like a thrown rock. A cluster of people stood on the HOA side of the gated community. Folding chairs, plastic wine cups, pastel polo shirts, and tight, judgmental eyes. They were all staring at one person, the black man sitting quietly by the lake. He was in a faded navy hoodie, sleeves pushed to his elbows, an old baseball cap pulled low. A small tent sat a few feet behind him under a maple tree, its fabric shimmering orange in the late light. A fishing rod stood planted in the damp soil beside him, line cutting a lazy angle into the water. A small portable grill smoked gently, the smell of seasoned meat drifting in the air. He looked like a man on vacation. They looked at him like he was a threat. His name was Malik Carter, and whether the HOA liked it or not, he owned everything behind him. Every tree, every blade of grass, every inch of shore on that side of the lake. He just hadn't told them yet. "Tom, I'm telling you, this is how it starts," hissed a woman in a lemon-yellow dress, clutching her cardigan tight around herself despite the warmth. "First camping, then tents everywhere, then crime. This is supposed to be a private lake." "This is a private lake, Sandra," replied a tall, broad-shouldered man, his arms crossed. His name was Tom Beckett, HOA president for Maple Ridge Lakeside Estates. He wore his title like a badge, or a weapon. "And look at him," muttered an older man in a golf shirt. "Looks like he just set up a whole camp. What's next? Music blasting all night. Fires? We've got property values to think about." They weren't whispering quietly. They wanted him to hear. Malik, sitting on his camp chair, eyes on the water, heard every word. His jaw clenched, but he said nothing at first. The cork bobber drifted lazily, catching the fading light. He gave it another second. Then he sighed, leaned back, and murmured to himself, "Dad, if you could see this." Malik's father used to say, "Land is the only thing they can't make more of, son. You own land, you own your future." Those words had pulled Malik through some of the hardest years of his life. Growing up in a cramped apartment in the city, he'd fallen asleep to arguments through thin walls and sirens screaming outside. His dad worked 3 jobs, hands always cracked from labor, but his eyes were always bright when he talked about somewhere quiet, somewhere ours. They'd never made it there together. His father died of a heart attack at 53. Before he could leave the city, before he could see open sky and a horizon that wasn't made of glass and steel. Malik carried that dream like a weight and a compass. Years later, after long nights in college, harder days climbing corporate ladders, stock investments, and a real estate startup that people laughed at until it started buying failing rural properties, Malik finally did it. He bought a ranch. Then, a few years later, he bought the land behind this lake. Quiet, secluded, peaceful. He just didn't realize his land touched the back of a private HOA community that believed the world ended where their white picket fences did. On the neighboring side, Tom whipped out his phone. "That's it. I'm calling the sheriff." "Good," Sandra said. "We shouldn't have to feel unsafe in our own community." "Unsafe?" Malik almost laughed. He was wearing old jeans, beat-up sneakers, and a $5 hat that said, "Gone fishing." The deadliest thing on him was probably the lemon pepper seasoning in his backpack. He heard the numbers punched in. 911. He didn't move, didn't pack up, didn't shout back. Instead, he let the line hook drift, the water whispering against the shore, and watched the clouds turn pink. On the other end of the call, Tom's voice shifted into its most authoritative register. "Yes, this is Thomas Beckett, president of the Maple Ridge HOA. We have a trespasser on our private lake. He's camping." "Yes," I said, camping. "There's a tent and everything. I don't feel safe. There's families here." Yes, we'd like an officer dispatched immediately." He paused, eyes locked on Malik. "He's a black male, mid-30s, hoodie cap." "Yes, alone." The word black landed heavy in the air. He didn't need to say it that way, but he did. Sandra nodded approvingly, as if that detail made the response more justified. "Thank you," Tom said into the phone. "We'll be waiting." He hung up and smirked. Let's see how long he wants to play camper when the sheriff shows up. Malik finally turned his head. The two sides locked eyes across the water. It wasn't a big lake. Voices carried. Faces were clear. So were intentions. He saw disgust, suspicion, a hint of enjoyment. They liked this. The rush of calling authority, the thrill of doing the right thing, of protecting the neighborhood. He saw all of it. He gave a small, calm nod back, then turned his gaze to the line in the water again. They weren't ready for someone who wasn't scared of them. They weren't ready for what the law actually said about this lake, because they had no idea they had just called the cops on themselves. An SUV crunched over gravel 30 minutes later, lights flashing red and blue against the rising dusk. The sheriff's vehicle pulled up to the little gravel lot near the walking trail, technically public access right away that the HOA also thought was theirs. Two deputies stepped out. One older, thick mustache, slow movements. The other younger, sharp-eyed, looking like he still cared about doing things by the book. Tom was already marching toward them with Sandra at his side, and two more HOA board members trailing like backup singers. "There he is," Tom said, jabbing a finger across the water the moment the deputy stepped out. "That's him. He's been setting up camp back there on our private lakefront." The older deputy, Deputy Harris, lifted a brow. "You said trespasser, right? On your property?" "Yes," Tom replied confidently. "This lake and its surrounding land are part of Maple Ridge Lakeside Estates. We have rules against this kind of thing. Overnight camping, fires, all of that. We need him removed." The younger deputy, Deputy Collins, squinted across the water. Malik glanced at the SUV, checked his watch, and slowly rose from his chair. His movements were calm, deliberate. He dusted off his jeans, grabbed nothing, and simply walked closer to the water's edge where they could see him clearly. "Evening, officers." Malik called across, voice steady, smooth. "You boys getting the show, too?" Tom's jaw tightened. "Sir," Harris said, turning slightly to face Malik across the distance, "I'm going to need you to hang tight over there. We're going to come around and talk to you, all right?" "No problem," Malik replied. "I'll put some more lemon on the grill." "Y'all hungry?" Sandra scoffed. "Unbelievable. He thinks this is a joke." Tom grimaced. "Let's go. There's a path around back, deputy. I'll show you." Harris frowned. "We'll handle it from here, sir. Just wait, all right?" Tom wasn't used to being told to wait. He bristled. "Excuse me. I'm the HOA president. I have a responsibility to—" "And we're the law." Collins cut in, tone respectful but firm. "Give us a minute. We'll let you know what's going on." Tom's face darkened, but he stepped back. The deputies turned, followed the narrow trail that curved around the lake, and cut through the stand of trees. Gravel shifted under their boots. Crickets chirped. The air felt heavier the closer they got to Malik's side of the water. By the time the trees opened, Malik had already folded his camp chair and moved it aside, the grill lid closed, his fishing rod still standing sentinel by the lake. He stood tall, hands loose at his sides. No sudden moves. Years of learned survival, wrapped in something that looked like casual relaxation. "Evening, officers," he said. "Name's Malik." Harris and Collins exchanged a brief look. "Evening," Harris replied. "We got a call about trespassing, camping where you're not supposed to be." "Ah," Malik said with a slow nod. "The HOA show. Those folks back there," Collins added. "They say this is HOA property. Private lakefront. Residents only. That you're violating their bylaws." "Bunch of big words," Malik said lightly. "Let me ask you something. Deputy, did they mention the property line?" Harris frowned. "Property line?" Malik gestured around him. "This here," he said, "this side of the lake. From that old oak by the bend down to broken fence post way over there, and back about 50 acres? That's mine." Collins blinked. "Yours?" "Deeded. Registered. Taxes paid and everything," Malik replied. "Y'all want to see?" He reached slowly toward a backpack. Harris's voice sharpened. "Sir, hand where I can see them." Malik froze, then raised his palm slightly. "Understood," he said quietly. I keep my papers in the front pocket. No weapons, just documents and snacks. Would you like to grab it, or should I? The younger deputy moved forward cautiously. I got it. He unzipped the backpack, rummaged, and pulled out a thick, folded envelope. Inside were photocopies of a deed, a survey map, and a letter from the county. Collins and Harris stepped aside, turning their flashlights on as they read. Silence stretched. The map clearly showed the lake. A thick black line marked ownership. The HOA subdivision curved like a crescent along one side. The other side, the side where Malik stood, tent pitched, grill cooling, was inside a different boundary line entirely. And at the bottom of the deed, in crisp, typed letters, owner, Malik A. Carter. Harris exhaled slowly. Well, he muttered. Collins looked up, eyes a bit wider now, something like respect flickering there. So, Malik said, voice still even, am I trespassing on my own land now, or do we have a misunderstanding to clear up? Harris closed the folder carefully. Mr. Carter, he started. Yeah. Far as I can see, Harris said, glancing to Collins, who nodded. You're perfectly within your rights to be here. You're the property owner. You're not breaking any laws. A slow smile pulled at the corner of Malik's mouth. Thought so, he said softly. What about the lake itself? Collins asked, more for thoroughness than challenge. Any shared rights? Easements? The HOA keeps insisting it's private. Malik chuckled. You know what's funny? Humor's in short supply right now, but go ahead, Harris said. When I bought this land, Malik explained, everyone thought I was crazy. Said it was useless. Too close to that subdivision. Too much headache. I did my homework, though. He pointed at the map. This lake, he said, was dug and expanded decades ago by the original ranch owners. When the subdivision was built, they negotiated access from the other side. Right there. See that little strip? That's their easement. They've got rights to use the water from their shore. But the land under my side, and 10 feet into the water from my shoreline. Malik tapped the map lightly. That's mine. Collins whistled under his breath. So they can fish over there, Malik finished. And I can camp over here. They can make all the HOA rules they want, but they stop where their land stops. Harris folded the documents, a rueful smile touching his face. I believe you might be right, Mr. Carter. Always nice to hear that from someone with a badge, Malik said. Now, if we're done, I'd really like to get back to my extremely dangerous activities of grilling and minding my business. Collins chuckled despite himself. Harris nodded. We're going to go back and talk to them. Oh, Malik said, his eyes glinting. Tell them this, if you don't mind. What's that? He leaned slightly closer. Tell them, he said calmly. They've been leaning their lawn chairs, building their little dock, and setting their private property signs over the water on my 10-foot strip of lakefront for years. Harris blinked. You're serious? Dead serious, Malik said. Had a surveyor come out and everything. They thought their dock was theirs. Technically, part of it is on my submerged land. They're the ones trespassing. Not me. The deputies looked at each other. This call had just flipped. Completely. Interesting, Collins murmured. Very, Malik agreed. But look, I'm not here to start a war. I came to fish, to think, to breathe. That lake reminds me of something I never had growing up. His voice softened. My dad always wanted a place like this, he added, where nobody could tell him he didn't belong. Harris's eyes shifted, something like understanding passing over his weathered features. All right, Mr. Carter, he said, tucking the documents back into the envelope. We're going to walk back and explain the situation. You do that, Malik replied. I'll be right here where I'm supposed to be. He took his papers, slid them carefully back into his bag, and walked calmly to the water. He didn't have to see the HOA's faces to know what was coming. But a part of him, the part that had been stepped on, doubted and underestimated his whole life, wanted to hear the moment they realized the truth, and wanted to see what they did with it. Because this wasn't just about a lake. It was about who gets to feel like they belong, and who thinks they have the right to decide that. The deputies reappeared on the HOA side a few minutes later. Tom rushed them before their boots even hit gravel. Well, Is he leaving? Did you explain this is private? Harris didn't bother to sugarcoat it. Sir, that man is on his own property. Tom blinked. What? He owns a side of the lake, Collins added, holding up a hand before Tom could argue. We saw the deed. We saw the survey map. It checks out in our system. We ran it from the car. That can't be right, Sandra snapped. This lake is part of Maple Ridge. It's in our brochure. Your brochure, Harris said mildly, isn't the county registry, ma'am. A murmur rolled through the gathered residents. Tom's lips tightened. Are you saying? I'm saying there's a boundary line, Harris said, and he's on his side of it. You called us about a trespasser. Far as the law is concerned, you called us about a landowner using his own property. Collins glanced toward the docks lining the water, the Adirondack chairs, the fire pit someone had built a little too close to the edge. And there's more. Everyone's attention snapped to him. Part of your dock and a bit of that shoreline seating area over there? Collins pointed carefully. They're built over land that technically belongs to him, about 10 feet in from his shore and under the water line. Submerged land rights. It's in the survey. You could feel the temperature of the crowd drop. That's impossible, Tom said, shaking his head. We've had this lake for years. We pay HOA dues for maintenance. We had a landscaper out here last month. Nobody said anything. Doesn't change the deed, Harris replied. Look, this is between you and your lawyers if you want to push it. But from our end, there's no crime being committed by that man. None. So we're not removing him. We can't. And honestly, he fixed Tom with a firm look. You might want to think twice before calling the cops on a man just for existing on his own property. Tom flushed. This is about safety. Is it? Collins asked quietly. The question hung there, heavy. Neighbors shifted. One man looked away. Another took his wife's hand. Someone at the back muttered, Man owns the land? This is going to get messy. Sandra folded her arms. So he's just allowed to camp there? With a tent? A fire? What if this attracts more people? What if he invites others? What about noise? Our bylaws. Your bylaws, Harris said, apply to your HOA members and your HOA property, not his ranch, not his land. That's not how it works. Tom's eyes narrowed, something dark sharpening behind them. So what? We just let him stay? We don't let him do anything, Collins replied. He's not asking permission. He doesn't have to. Tom's jaw clenched so tight the muscle jumped. Across the water, in the fading light, Malik sat back down in his camp chair. He cast his line again, the soft plop of the hook echoing across the lake. He didn't wave. He didn't taunt. He just existed. Calm, solid, unbothered, and somehow that made them angrier. Much angrier. Sandra leaned in close to Tom, voice low, but not nearly low enough. We can't let this stand. If we don't stop him now, this place is going to change. You know how it goes. First one, then another, then what? Came another voice suddenly from behind them. They turned. A younger resident, maybe late 20s, stood with his arms crossed. Dark hair, tan skin, Maple Ridge branded hoodie. Ray Ortiz, one of the newer homeowners. Then what, Sandra? Ray repeated. You gonna say it or just let it hang in the air? She blinked. I don't know what you mean. You do. Ray said evenly. We all do. You didn't call the cops when the miller's teenage son brought 10 friends and blasted music half the night at the dock last weekend. That's different, Sandra snapped. How? Ray shot back. Because he lives here? Because he's white? Because his parents are on the HOA board. The crowd grew restless. This isn't the time for division. Tom cut in sharply. We have to present a united front. A united front about what? Ray countered. About harassing a landowner who keeps to himself? You heard the deputies. He didn't break any laws. He didn't bother anybody. He was literally just camping. The word felt almost silly in contrast to the siren still echoing faintly in everyone's minds. Harris cleared his throat. Folks, we're going to head out unless there's anything else. But I'll leave you with this. disputes like this, they can turn ugly fast. And from where I'm standing, this one only became a problem after someone decided that man didn't look like he belonged here. He let that sink in. Tom's ears turned bright red. "You're accusing us of racism?" he demanded, voice rising. "I'm saying," Harris replied, not flinching, "the law sees a property owner minding his business. You saw something else. Maybe ask yourselves why." With that, the deputies turned and walked back to their SUV. The HOA members watched them go, anger, embarrassment, and confusion mixing into something volatile. Malik watched the red and blue lights fade from the other side of the lake. He exhaled. He'd hoped, stupidly, that they'd just accept it and leave him alone. But he knew people like this. They didn't like losing control. They didn't like being wrong. And they definitely didn't like discovering that the man they tried to push away actually had more rights in this moment than they did. Near the HOA dock, Tom's voice turned cold as stone. "Fine," he said, "so the sheriff won't do anything. That doesn't mean we're powerless." Sandra nodded slowly. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," Tom said, "we talked to the county about noise ordinances, fire restrictions, environmental impact. I'm thinking we look at every code, every rule, every regulation in the book." He stared across the water, eyes locked on Malik's lone tent. "And I'm thinking," he finished, "that if he wants to make this a legal battle over a strip of land and some dirty water, then we'll show him how far we're willing to go to keep this community safe." "Safe," Ray muttered under his breath. He turned away, disgust on his face, but didn't walk off. Not yet. He was watching, waiting, because something about Malik's quiet defiance had struck him deeply. Something about watching an entire system move against a single man who had done nothing wrong felt wrong in his bones. Across the lake, Malik's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. A name flashed there. Ava, attorney. He smiled faintly and picked up. "You were right," he said into the phone without greeting. A woman's voice came through, amused and sharp. "They called the cops, didn't they?" "Right on cue," Malik said. HOA president himself dialed. "Deputies just left. They know the truth now." "Good," Ava replied. "You ready for phase 2? Malik watched the HOA cluster together in the growing darkness, heads bowed, plotting. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think they're about to make every mistake we need them to." He reeled in his line, the bobber cutting a bright path through the water, and cast it again with a smooth flick at his wrist. He had come here to camp, to fish, to remember his father. But now this was bigger. Bigger than a tent, bigger than a lake. This was about every time someone like him had been told, directly or indirectly, "You don't belong here." And for once, he had the paperwork, the law, and the will to push back. Hard. "Yeah, Ava," he repeated, eyes never leaving the HOA side. "I'm ready." The grill smoke drifted upward, fading into the purple sky. Criquesson. The lake glimmered between two worlds that had just collided. And somewhere in that quiet tension, something fragile and dangerous shifted. Because this wasn't just an HOA dispute anymore. This was the opening scene of a much bigger fight. And none of them, least of all the people on the other side, had any idea how far Malik was willing to go to make sure they never, ever forgot whose land they stepped on. 3 days after the cops were called, the HOA clubhouse was packed. Emergency HOA meeting. Lakefront security and property issue attendance required for all residents. It might as well have said, emergency meeting. How do we get rid of the black guy across the lake? But they'd never write it that honestly. Malik sat in his truck 30 yards away, engine off, windows cracked. The clubhouse lights glowed warm against the dark. Through the large windows, he could see silhouettes, gestures, and tension. He wasn't part of their HOA. He wasn't invited. He came anyway. Not inside. He didn't need to. He just wanted to see who was running their mouths about him. Wanted to feel the energy. His phone buzzed again. Ava on video this time. He accepted, and her confident face filled the screen. Smooth, dark skin, sharp eyes behind glasses, hair in a low bun. She was sitting at a desk, stacked with files. "You outside?" she asked. "Yeah," Malik said. "They're all in there." probably planning how to turn sunlight into a violation. Ava smirked. Well, let them plan. We're not here to play defense. We're building a case. Malik leaned back, staring at the clubhouse. You really think we can flip this? He asked. Make them answer for this instead of just making my life harder until I give up? I don't think, Ava said. I know. She tapped a stack of documents. You have something most people don't, Malik. You have proof. You have patience. And you have one more thing they're underestimating. What's that? You're not alone, she replied. You think you're just one man by a lake. But once this starts, once people see what they're doing, you won't be alone anymore. He glanced back at the clubhouse window. Inside, hands flew in the air. Fingers pointed. People shook their heads, some with anger, some with discomfort. Ray's in there, by the way, Malik said. The younger guy? The one who spoke up. Ava asked, Yeah, he looks like the only one not pretending this is about safety. Good, Ava said. We may need him. A voice from the inside always helps. Malik drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. Part of me just wants to sell, he admitted quietly. Take their money, move somewhere nobody cares what color their neighbor is. And the other part? Ava asked. He watched the woman at the clubhouse door glance nervously to the parking lot before darting back inside. The other part, he said slowly, remembers my dad in our tiny living room, talking about owning land as if it were some kind of shield. He swallowed. And I'm tired of that shield only working for some people. Ava's expression softened. Then don't sell, she said firmly. We're not begging for a seat at their table. We're building your own. A knock suddenly landed on Malik's passenger window. He flinched, then turned. Ray stood there, hoodie up, hands visible. Malik blinked. Well, that didn't take long, Ava murmured in his ear. Malik rolled down the window a crack. You lost? Malik asked. Ray cracked a nervous smile. Depends who you ask. Can I help you with something? Malik added. Yeah. Ray said, glancing back at the clubhouse. I think we both might help each other. Inside the clubhouse 15 minutes earlier, the air was thick. Tom stood at the front with a printed copy of the community bylaws, slapping it against his palm like a preacher with a Bible. So as I was saying, he boomed, we have spent years building a standard here. We've invested in security. We've invested in image. This is a private community. And all of that is at risk if we allow this ranch owner to turn our lakefront into his personal campsite. A murmur of agreement rolled through part of the room. One woman raised her hand. I brought my kids down to the lake yesterday, and he was just there, sitting, watching the water. It felt weird, uncomfortable. Exactly, Tom said. Our families shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable in their own neighborhood. You mean, Ray muttered under his breath, your family shouldn't have to know someone else exists near them. Tom heard him. What was that, Mr. Ortiz? He asked sharply. All eyes pivoted. Ray straightened. He hadn't planned to speak. But now that it was on him, he couldn't duck it. I said, Ray repeated, louder this time, you're framing this like some crime wave, but all he's done is camp on his own land. Which, by the way, he owns completely legally, according to the sheriff. Tom's jaw flexed. We're not disputing the legality of his initial presence. We're talking about the long-term consequences. Consequences of what? Ray said, of a black guy owning land near your lake? Gasps. Someone whispered, Oh my God. Tom's face hardened. Race has nothing to do with this. Ray stared at him. Really? Because we had contractors, fishermen, landscapers, delivery guys out near the shore before. Nobody called 911 on them. That's different, Sanders snapped. They're here for work, not camping out like. Like what? Ray shot back. Like someone lower than you? Come on. If he were white with a Yeti cooler and a Labrador, you'd probably invite him to the next barbecue. More murmurs. Some eyes ducked. Some glared. Tom slammed the bylaws onto the table. This is not productive, he barked. We are here to talk strategy. The deputies mentioned his submerged land rights. Fine. We may not be able to keep him completely away from the lake, but we can make it extremely uncomfortable for him to keep interfering with our enjoyment of it. Interfering? Ray said. He was literally on his side, not playing music, not yelling, just sitting. Tom ignored him. We have leverage, Tom continued. Noise ordinances, fire restrictions, environmental regulations. We can file complaints with the county. We can argue that his camping activities are increasing foot traffic, creating risk. We can sue. At the very least, we can drown him in paperwork and fees until he gets a message and leaves. The coldness in his voice made even some of his supporters shift in their seats. You're talking about harassment, Ray said flatly. Let's call it what it is. Tom turned to the room. Or, he said smoothly, ignoring Ray, we can offer to buy him out. Use our legal leverage to pressure him into taking a generous offer. He walks away richer. We keep our peace and property value. Win-win. That's not a win-win if one side was forced into it, Ray muttered, but his voice was nearly drowned out now by residents erupting into discussion. How much will we offer? Can we afford that? We could raise dues. My husband's in commercial real estate. He might help. Maybe we contact a lawyer. The room buzzed with plans that revolved around one idea. Make the problem disappear. Okay, Ray said to himself, pushing his chair back. Enough. He stood up. Excuse me, he called out. I'm done listening to this. Tom sighed theatrically. Mr. Ortiz. No. Ray cut in. You can talk about bylaws and property values all you want. But I'm not interested in being part of a group that thinks it's okay to weaponize the system against someone just because they don't fit your idea of belonging. Watch your words, son, an older resident snapped. We're just protecting our homes. From what? Ray asked. A tent? A camp chair? The fact that your kids have to see a black man enjoying the same view for once. The silence that followed was sharp as glass. Ray scanned the faces, some ashamed, some angry, some blank, some quietly nodding. Look, do whatever you want, he said finally, but don't pretend this is about safety or rules. This is about control. You lost it when you discovered the lake isn't entirely your sandbox, and now you're trying to bully someone into giving it back. He grabbed his hoodie and headed for the door. Behind him, he heard Tom say, If you walk out that door, you're stepping away from this community. Ray, don't expect us to bend over backward if you need anything in the future. Ray paused at the doorway, hand on the knob. He looked back over his shoulder. If this is what community looks like to you, he said quietly, then I think I'm better off without it. He walked out. The door shut behind him with a soft but final click. Inside, the HOA dissolved into chaotic chatter. Outside, Ray stood under the cool night sky, chest tight. He caught sight of Malik's truck in the shadows, lights off, silhouette barely visible. And that's when he made a decision. If everyone else was going to treat Malik like the enemy, he was going to do the opposite. He was going to give him a choice those people never considered. The choice to stand together. Back in the truck, Malik glanced from his screen to the figure approaching. Ava, he said, we my company. Good, she replied. Open the door. Malik rolled down the window partway as Ray knocked. You lost, Malik repeated. Ray took a breath. No, I just walked out on an HOA meeting that spent 30 minutes planning how to make your life miserable. Malik raised a brow. You live there? Unfortunately, Ray said. Name's Ray. I've seen you by the lake. I, also saw the deputies talking to you the other day. You one of the people who called them? Malik asked, tone cool but not hostile. No, Ray said quickly. If I'd known they were planning that, I would have said something. You did tonight, Malik pointed out. Ray blinked. You heard that? Malik tilted his head toward the clubhouse. Hard not to. You projected pretty well when you told them they didn't like seeing a black man enjoy the same view. Ray flushed slightly. Yeah, well, someone had to say it. And now you're here, Malik said. Why? I wanted to apologize, I guess, Ray said, for the way they treated you, for how they still are, and also, he hesitated. And also what? Malik asked. Also warn you, Ray said. They're not going to let this go. They're talking about calling the county, filing complaints, offering you money, but making it hell if you say no. They're not just going to bully you in person. They're going to use the system. Lawyers, paperwork, the whole thing. Malik nodded slowly. None of this surprised him. That tracks, he murmured. And Ray swallowed. I don't want to be part of that. So if there's anything I can do to help you, I will. Malik studied him. Why? He asked finally. You don't know me. Ray gave a half laugh. My parents came to this country with nothing. Ran a little bodega in a neighborhood where they were always treated like they were lucky to be allowed there. Cops never came when they needed them. Landlord never fixed anything. And any time they complained, people told them, be grateful, at least you're allowed to rent here. He met Malik's eyes. So when I see a whole room of people trying to push someone off land he actually owns because he doesn't fit their idea of belonging, yeah, that hits a nerve. Malik's grip on the steering wheel relaxed a little. Fair enough, he said. He tapped the phone. Ray, this is Ava. She's my attorney. I had her listening on the line. Ray blinked. Oh, hi. Hello, Mr. Ortiz. Ava's voice floated from the phone. Appreciate you standing up in there. That took guts. Didn't feel like guts, Ray muttered. Felt like overdue. Ava chuckled. Malik, she said, he might be useful if the HOA escalates this. Having a resident willing to testify about their real motives could be powerful. Ray's eyes sharpened. Testify? Not yet, Ava said. Let's start with something simple. Malik, yeah. You ready to stop reacting and start moving? She asked. Malik stared at the glowing clubhouse windows. He thought of his father's hands, raw from work. He thought of the police lights reflected in lake water. He thought of Tom's face, all smug authority and thinly veiled disdain. I'm ready, he said quietly. Good, Ava replied. Tomorrow you go to the county office. File a formal notice asserting your submerged land rights around your shoreline. Request an inspection of unauthorized structures crossing your boundary. That dock, those chairs, they're technically encroaching. Let's get that documented. Ray blinked. Wait, you're going after their dock? Not out of spite, Ava corrected. Out of principle. They built on land that wasn't theirs. If they wanted to talk neighbor to neighbor, maybe Malik would have let it slide. But they called the cops. They're planning harassment. They want to flex the system. Her voice hardened. Fine, we'll show them the system cuts both ways. Malik exhaled, feeling something in him shift. I'm really about to do this, huh? He asked. You're reclaiming what's yours, Ava said, and you're drawing a line, literally and figuratively. Ray watched Malik, a mixture of admiration and worry on his face. They're going to hate this, Ray said. Oh, I know, Malik replied. A faint smile ghosted his lips. But maybe that's what it's going to take for them to finally see the difference between this is ours and this is fair. He glanced down at his hands. Dad, he whispered under his breath, I hope you're watching. Then he looked up, the quiet fisherman now carrying something like fire behind his eyes. Tomorrow, he said, tightening his grip on the steering wheel. We start making it official. Ray nodded, a strange excitement mixing with fear. If you need someone to back you up, I'm in. Ava's voice warmed. Then welcome to the team, Ray. Outside, the clubhouse door slammed as people spilled out, voices heated, faces twisted in frustration. Tom stood among them, talking fast, already spinning the narrative. In his mind, he was the hero, protecting his community. He had no idea he'd just created the perfect villain in someone else's story, and no idea that, in the eyes of the law and the world beyond his HOA bubble, that villain was him. Back at the lake the next morning, a county truck would pull up. A surveyor would unfold his tripod and measuring tools. Neighbors would peek from behind curtains. Paperwork would be stamped. Lines would be drawn. Pressure would rise. And Malik? He'd be standing right there on his own land, as the system they tried to use to erase him slowly turned its gaze back on them. By sunrise, the lake was wrapped in mist. A thin silver fog hovered over the water, softening the edges of everything. Trees, docks, fences, even the crooked little HOA private lake. Residents only sign. It made the place look almost peaceful. Almost. Malik stood at his shoreline with a mug of coffee in one hand and a folder tucked under his arm. He wore a gray hoodie, sweatpants, and boots still damp from the dew. His tent was zipped, the small grill cold. Behind him, the vast stretches ranch rolled out in shades of gold and green. He looked like a man enjoying his morning. He also looked like a man about to redraw the world. The crunch of tires on gravel came right on time. A white county truck rolled onto the public access patch between the HOA road and the lake trail. On its side was the crest of the county planning department. The driver cut the engine and stepped out, followed by a younger tech holding a tripod and surveying equipment. The older man straightened his cap and waved. "Mr. Carter?" he called across the water. Malik lifted his mug. "That's me. Trail's on your right. I'll meet you halfway." He set his coffee on a stump, grabbed his folder, and walked along the shoreline. The damp grass cushioned his steps as he followed the curve of the lake toward a narrow strip of public right-of-way, where the county's access path met his land. On the HOA side, curtains twitched, doors opened. People stepped out onto their decks in robes and slippers, clutching coffee cups like binoculars. They watched the county truck, the men in vests, the equipment. They watched Malik. The narrative in their heads was already spinning. He must be in trouble. Maybe the county is finally fixing it. Good. Someone needed to put him in his place. They didn't realize the visit had his fingerprints all over it. At the midpoint, Malik and the county man met. They shook hands. "Morning," Malik said. "Morning," the man replied. "I'm Dale Weston, County Planning and Land Services. This is my technician, Kyle." Kyle lifted a hand in a half wave as he set down the tripod. "Appreciate you coming out," Malik said. "Well," Dale replied, pulling a rolled-up map from a tube, "your email was detailed. We don't usually get landowners quoting statute numbers in the opening paragraph." Malik smiled slightly. "I have a very enthusiastic lawyer." "A good one, from the looks of it," Dale said. He opened a map and clipped it to a clipboard. The sheet fluttered in the morning breeze. "So, you're asserting submerged land rights on your side of the lake, correct?" "That's right," Malik said. "Original ranch deed from the 80s spells it out. When they dug and expanded this lake, the previous ranch owner retained rights to the land under the water extending 10 feet from this bank. That transferred to me with the sale." Dale nodded. "I confirmed that with the county registry. You're in the system as the current owner." "Then we got a problem," Malik said calmly. He pointed across the water. "Because their dock and part of their seating area are sitting on top of land I pay taxes on." Dale peered through the mist. The HOA dock jutted out like a wooden finger, planks bleached by years of sun. A small platform with Adirondack chairs sat at one corner, a rope with little plastic buoys marking a swim zone sagging over the water. From a distance, it looked harmless. Up close, it looked like intrusion. "According to the survey," Malik continued, "their dock extends at least 6 feet past the midpoint toward my side. That means the posts and some of the platform cross the invisible line into my submerged property." Dale squinted at his map. "We'll have to verify that. But if those measurements are accurate," he glanced at Malik, "then some of that structure is, in fact, an encroachment." "I'm not trying to steal anyone's afternoon fishing," Malik said. "I just want the same thing they do with their land. Respect. They called the cops on me for camping on my own shore. Now they're planning to use the system to squeeze me out. So I decided to use the system to just correctly." Dale grunted, half impressed, half weary. "Fair enough," he said. "Here's how this'll go. We'll run the line from the register markers, confirm the boundaries, document any encroachments. If the dock crosses into your submerged tract, we'll have to notify the HOA in writing. After that, there's a process. They can apply for an easement, negotiate with you, or remove the violating sections." Malik nodded slowly. A breeze rippled the water, sending gentle waves against the shoreline. "Sounds good," he said. Whatever the process is, I'll follow it. I just want it on record that this isn't one-sided. Dale gave a small smile. You'd be surprised how often people assume it is, until someone like you reads a fine print. The word someone like you carried weight. Malik caught it, but let it pass. We'll start from your corner marker. Dale said. Kyle, get the station set up. Kyle jogged back to the truck for more gear. On the HOA side, Tom stepped out onto the lawn fully dressed, phone in hand, HOA board members flanking him. He saw the county truck, saw Malik talking to man with the clipboard, saw the tripod. His stomach twisted. What's going on? Sandra hissed, rushing up beside him. What are they doing? I don't know, Tom said, jaw tight, but I'm going to find out. He started towards the public access strip. Dale placed a small metal spike in the ground near a weathered survey stake barely visible in the grass. This is your corner, he told Malik. Legal starting point. From here, the line follows the coordinates along the waterline via that bend there, then across. We'll take readings, measure distances, and map it. Do your thing, Malik said. He stepped back. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't have to check the ID. Ava, he said, raising it to his ear. They're here. Maps out. Tripods up. HOA is watching. Her smooth voice flowed back. Good. Remember, you're not doing anything aggressive. Let them be the ones who look emotional. You stand, you answer questions, you cooperate. You ask for verification. That's your right. Got it, Malik said. And if Tom or any of them come near and try to intimidate you, she added. I'll smile, Malik said. Smile and say, good morning. A light chuckle. I knew I liked you. He hung up as he saw movement in his peripheral vision. Tom, in a pressed polo and jeans too clean for real work, marched along the public path like he owned it. A couple of board members followed just behind. Greg, a short man with thick glasses, and Linda, who clutched a binder close to her chest like armor. Excuse me, Tom called. Dale looked up from the stake, brow furrowing. Can I help you? Yes, Tom said, not looking at him. His eyes were on Malik. I'd like to know what's happening on our lake. Our, Malik repeated lightly. Interesting word. Tom ignored him, focusing on Dale. Are you with the county? Yes, Dale said. Planning and Land Services. We're conducting a boundary verification. An encroachment assessment put a request to the landowner here. Tom stiffened. Encroachment? Standard procedure. Dale replied. There was a complaint about potential structures crossing property lines. We're here to confirm the boundaries. Tom's face went pale, then flushed. Our dock, he said slowly, has been here for years. If there was some technical issue, surely the county would have told us before now. We respond when we're notified, Dale said evenly. That's what's happening now. Sandra's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. He's going after our dock. Malik took a breath, kept his tone calm. I'm not going after anything, ma'am, he said. I filed notice that structures were crossing onto land I own, the same way your HOA would if my tent was 10 feet onto your manicured lawn instead of my dirt. Tom snapped his head toward him. You're doing this out of spite. Malik met his gaze without flinching. If I were doing out of spite, your dock would already be a bonfire. I followed the law. You should be glad I did. Dale cleared his throat. Folks, he said, I'd appreciate it if we keep this civil. We're just verifying lines today. Nothing gets removed today. Nothing gets shut down today. This is a fact-finding process. You shouldn't even be here, Tom said to Malik. This isn't, you know what? Fine. If you want to play games, we'll see how you like it when we... Tom, a voice cut in sharply. They all turned, raced it a few yards up the path, hands in his pockets, dark eyes steady. He wore a plain black T-shirt and jeans, hair still damp like he'd left his house in a hurry. What are you doing here? Tom snapped. Taking a walk, Ray said. Same as I did yesterday. Public path, right? You're not helping, Sandra hissed. Wasn't trying to, Ray replied. He looked at Malik and gave a tight, respectful nod. Morning. Morning, Ray, Malik replied. Tom's gaze ping-ponged between them, suspicion sharpening. "You two know each other?" he demanded. "Not really," Ray said. "Yet." Malik shrugged. "We spoke last night. He filled me in about your emergency HOA meeting, the one where you talked about drowning me in paperwork until I sell my land." Dale's brows shot up. "You what?" he asked quietly. Tom's jaw clenched. "You're going to believe the word of some." "Careful," Ray said, a warning edge in his voice. Tom swallowed the word that had been about to slip out. "Some outsider," he finished instead, forcing a smile. "People get emotional in meetings. Exaggerations happen." "Not this time," Ray said. "I was there when you said, and I quote, 'At the very least, we can drown him in paperwork and fees until he gets the message and leaves.'" Ray turned to Dale. "You want a statement about their intentions?" he added. "I'll give you one. In writing." Tom looked like someone had yanked the floor out from under him. Dale studied Ray, then Malik, then Tom. "This is getting well outside my jurisdiction," he muttered. Then his tone turned professional again. "For now, my job is to confirm boundaries. Let's do that." He nodded at Kyle. "Set the instrument at this point. We'll shoot across the lake and mark where the line hits their shore." They got to work. For the next hour, science quietly dismantled assumption. Kyle set up the tripod, leveling the instrument, while Dale stepped between marked stakes, logging coordinates into a tablet. He called numbers. Kyle adjusted angles. A laser beam, infrared and invisible. Trace an exact path across the lake between points that existed only in math and law. They marked Malik's 10-foot submerged zone with small flags poked into mud and stones along his shoreline. Red, spaced neatly, like a dotted line the water couldn't wash away. On the HOA side, Dale asked permission, coldly polite now, to step onto the lawn near the dock. Tom's reply was strained. "Of course. We have nothing to hide." He had a lot to hide. He just didn't know it yet. Dale and Kyle repeated the process from the HOA bank, aligning instruments, checking angles and distances. They measured where the theoretical property boundary cut through the water, then where Malik's submerged rights extended. The invisible line became visible in their murmured confirmations, in the numbers appearing on the tablet. At one point, Kyle glanced from the screen to the dock and let out a low whistle. "Yikes," he muttered. "What?" Dale asked. Kyle turned the tablet so he could see. Dale's brows shot up. "Well, Mr. Beckett," he said carefully, "it appears Mr. Carter's initial assessment was correct. Given the data from the original surveys and updated measurements, your dock posts and part of that platform are indeed over a submerged parcel." "How much of it?" Malik asked. Dale pointed. "You see where the water deepens color right about there?" he said, gesturing to the mid-lake point. "From that line inward about 6 to 8 feet on this side, you own the land beneath. The dock extends past that. The outer posts stand in your zone. In that corner of the platform there," he pointed to the end of the dock where an HOA member had hung a small "No trespassing" sign. "That's over your land, too." A stunned silence washed over both banks. Tom's face went utterly still, like a mask. "That can't be right," Sanders said. "This is our lake. Our HOA maintains it, cleans it, insures it. Our brochure." "Your brochure," Dale said mildly, "is marketing material. We work with recorded surveys and deeds, and those say what they say." "You're taking a side," Tom snapped. "I'm taking the side of the data," Dale replied. "This isn't a debate. It's a measurement." Greg stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. But we've had this dock for more than 15 years. Doesn't that count for something? Squatters' rights, or grandfathered in, or something like that?" "Adverse possession of submerged land in this county is highly restricted," Dale said. "You'd need continuous, open, hostile, and notorious use under a claim of right. And even then—" He stopped himself. "Look, I'm not your lawyer. I'm just telling you the current recorded reality. Structures are crossing a line. When I get back to the office, I'm obligated to write an encroachment notice. What does that mean for us?" Linda asked, her voice tremulous. "It means," Dale said, "you'll receive a formal letter explaining the situation and giving you a deadline to address it. That might involve negotiation with Mr. Carter for an easement. It might involve altering or removing sections of the dock. That's for you and possibly your attorneys to work out. He turned to Malik. And Mr. Carter, he added, you'll receive a copy as a complainant and affected landowner. You'll have the option to pursue enforcement if they don't comply. We'll document today's findings thoroughly. Appreciate that, Malik said quietly. Tom stared at the dock like it had betrayed him. This is insane, he whispered. We built that for the community. We used HOA funds. We improved this place. You can't just walk in here and say it's his. It always was, Ray said softly. Tom spun on him. You don't even belong here if you're siding with him. Ray lifted his chin. I belong here as much as you do, he replied. Ipay duas. I pay taxes. I follow the rules. But I don't confuse rules with whatever makes me feel powerful. He nodded toward Malik. And he belongs on his own land more than any of us belong near it. Sandra scoffed. You know nothing about property law. Maybe, Ray said, but I know what I saw at that meeting. I know what I heard. And now the county knows there's more going on here than a simple dock issue. Dale gave a small, reluctant nod. I'll be honest, he said. If any of this escalates beyond property boundaries into pattern of conduct complaints, there are other departments that might get interested. Civil rights, harassment claims, that sort of thing. Tom's eyes snapped to him. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Dale said slowly, if you've been treating this man differently than any other landowner who uses a lake, and if you've been using calls to law enforcement or county offices selectively because of who he is rather than what he's doing. He let the implication hang. That's above my pay grade. Dale finished. But I can't unhear what I've heard. Tom swallowed, a flicker of fear finally breaking through his indignation. For the first time, he seemed to realize something. He wasn't the only one who could use the system. An hour later, the county truck drove off, leaving behind small flags on Malik's side and a heavy silence on the HOA side. The fog had burned off. The lake shone bright and exposed under the mid-morning sun. Malik stood with Ray at the shore, watching Tom and the others shuffle back toward their homes like a defeated parade. Think that'll slow them down? Ray asked. Malik took a sip of his now lukewarm coffee. No, he said, but it changes the terrain. Ray cracked a smile. You talk like a general. Grew up needing one, Malik replied. Didn't have one, so I learned. He set the empty mug on the ground and squinted across the water. On the far deck, Tom was already talking animatedly to someone on the phone. His gestures were sharp, frantic. Who do you think he's calling? Ray asked. Lawyer, Malik said, or the rest of the board. Or both. You worried? Ray asked. Malik thought about it. Was he? He felt something in his chest. Fear. Sure, a leftover from years of being outnumbered in rooms where people had more connections, more money, more assumptions on their side. But layered over that now was something else. Stability. The feel of the earth under his boots. The knowledge that the papers in his folder matched the flags in the ground. I'm not eager to fight them, Malik said finally, but I'm not scared of them either. Ray nodded slowly. You know they'll spin this like you're attacking the community, he said. They'll send emails about hostile neighbors and threats to our way of life. They'll cozy up to the same deputies they called on you and complain about being victims. Probably, Malik said. You're going to be a story, Ray added, whether you want to or not. Malik glanced at him. You say that like you've thought this through already. Ray shrugged. I work in marketing. I know how people tell stories. A beat passed. What if, Ray said slowly, you told yours first? Malik frowned. What do you mean? Ray shifted, energy flickering in his eyes. Video, he said. Online. Not some rant. A calm, powerful explanation. Who you are. What you own. What happened when they called the cops on you. How they're reacting now that the county confirmed their docks on your land. He gestured toward Malik's ranch. People eat that stuff up on social media, Ray said. But more than that, this isn't just drama. It's a conversation about who feels entitled to certain spaces, and who's always made to feel like they're trespassing even when the deed says otherwise. Malik thought of Ava's words. You're not alone. He thought of his father saying, land is your shield. What do you do in marketing? Malik asked. Brand strategy. Ray said. Storytelling. I help companies figure out how they want to be seen, and then show the world. He smiled faintly. I'd rather help a person for once, he added, especially someone they're trying this hard to erase. Malik looked back at the water. He'd wanted quiet. He'd wanted mornings like this with nothing but birds, ripples, and memories of a man who never got to leave the city. But the moment Tom dialed 911, they'd turn his quiet into confrontation. Maybe he couldn't keep this fight completely private. Let me think about it, Malik said. Ray nodded. Sure, but I wouldn't wait too long, he said. Rumor travels faster than truth, unless you give truth a head start. They stood there a moment longer, listening to the wind in the reeds. On the other side, a small cluster of HOA residents had gathered around Tom, gesturing and talking low. Sandra pointed angrily across the water. Greg shook his head. Linda scribbled something in her binder. The battle lines were clearer now. They weren't just in the dirt. They were in the stories people chose to tell. Later that afternoon, Malik sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by documents. The ranch house wasn't fancy, but it had long windows, creaking floors, and walls that held history without suffocating him. A framed black and white photo of his father sat on a side table. Broad shoulders, tired eyes, a proud, stubborn set to his jaw. Malik placed the county's initial visit receipt beside the deed and the survey copies. The edges didn't line up physically, but on paper, they formed a shield. His phone buzzed. Ava, attorney. Incoming call. He answered. Well, she asked, how bad was it? You ever watch someone realize their favorite toy was never actually theirs? Malik said. Ava hummed. Tom saw the flags and... He saw the flags, Malik said. He saw the measurements. He heard the words encroachment notice. Good. Ava said. That does exactly what we needed. It proves you're not some crazy guy making claims. It shows you're the one respecting procedure. And them, Malik asked. They'll scramble, Ava said. They'll call a lawyer, complain about unfairness. Maybe try to claim some grandfather rights. But from a public perspective, they lost the initial narrative. You were calm. You followed the law. You asked for a county visit instead of starting a screaming match. That matters. Malik hesitated. Ray wants me to go public, he said. Put the story online. Explain what's happening. Ava didn't answer right away. Legally, she said at last, you're allowed to, as long as you stick to facts and avoid defamation. No false statements presented as truth, you're fine. But once you put something online, you're inviting the world in. It can help. It can also bring hate. I've seen hate up close, Malik said, but I've also seen what silence does. I'm not sure I want my father's dream to quietly bend to people like them. Ava's voice softened. Then maybe it's time to talk, she said. He looked up at his father's photo. What if I mess it up, he asked. Then we learn and try again, Ava replied. But from what I've seen, you know exactly what you want to say. And you have something a lot of folks like you never had in these situations. What's that? Evidence, she said simply. And a paper trail. Malik exhaled. All right, he said slowly. I'll do it, but I want it done right. Ray can help you with the messaging, Ava said. I'll help you with what's safe to mention. We'll frame this as what it is. Not a feud, not drama, but a story about property rights, prejudice, and persistence. And a lake, Malik said, smiling faintly. And a lake, Ava agreed. After they hung up, Malik sat in quiet for a moment. He opened his laptop. The screen lit his face as he created a new folder, Lakefront Truth Project. Inside, he started dropping things, scanned copies of the deed, the survey map, the county receipt, notes from his conversation with Dale, bullet points from Ray's suggestions, a draft title. They called the cops on me for camping at my own lake. Then the county checked the property lines. He stared at the words. It felt surreal. He was a ranch owner, not a content creator. A man who had clawed his way up through numbers and contracts, not clicks and comments. But maybe, just this once, his story needed more than a file cabinet. Maybe it needed an audience. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Hey, it's Ray. Got your number from Ava. Hope that's okay. If you're serious about making a video, I can come by tomorrow. I'll bring gear. We'll keep it simple, but clean. No pressure. Just say the word. Malik typed back. Malik, tomorrow's good. Noon. Come to the ranch side gate. I'll have it open. He hit send. Then he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Memories tumbled through him. His father talking about someday, the feeling of signing the deed for this place, the sting of police lights washing over his camp for simply existing. He opened his eyes. All right, he whispered to the empty kitchen. Let's see what happens when the story's ours. Across the lake, that same night, a very different kind of meeting was happening. Tom paced in his living room. Phone pressed his ear, angry red lines cutting across his cheeks. For the third time, I'm telling you, he hissed into the receiver. He's weaponizing obscure land rules to attack our community. The dock is the heart of this place. You have to be able to do something. On the other end, a tired-sounding attorney replied, Mr. Beckett, I understand your frustration, but from what you've described, and from the preliminary county notice I've been forwarded, you're the ones with the structure on his submerged property. This isn't obscure. It's what your original developers agreed to when they built Maple Ridge. They told us the lake was ours. Tom said, they likely told you it was private access from your side, the lawyer said. Not that you own all submerged land. Look, there are arguments we can explore. Long-standing use, potential easement by implication, maybe even an offer to formalize rights with Mr. Carter. But starting a legal war over this, especially after a 911 call, that could be seen as discriminatory. It wasn't discriminatory. Tom snapped. He was camping. There was a fire. He was on his property, the lawyer said, voice flattening. And the deputies documented that. If this escalates and Mr. Carter hires counsel, which it seems he has, you risk turning a property dispute into a civil rights issue. Those don't play out well in the media or in court. Tom's grip tightened on the phone. So what? We just roll over, he spat. Let him walk all over us. You can try to negotiate, the lawyer said. Offer to pay for an easement or piecemeal access rights. Sweeten it with a high number. If he's reasonable, you both get what you want. And if he isn't? Tom asked. Then, the lawyer said, I suggest you remember that the county may not be the only one watching. These stories have a way of going public these days. And juries tend to sympathize with lone landowners more than organized boards that call law enforcement on them for camping. Tom's eyes flicked toward the dark shape of Malik's side of the lake. I'll consider what you've said, he forced out. Do that, the lawyer replied. The line went dead. Tom lowered the phone slowly, his thoughts churning. He'd built his whole identity around control. Control over his home, his reputation, his neighborhood. He was a man who made problems disappear before they interrupted anyone's golf schedule. Now, for the first time in a long while, his authority had hit something it couldn't move, the law. And behind that, quietly, the world's gaze he suddenly feared. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message in the HOA group chat. Linda, does anyone know why there were county people at the lake today? Greg, they said something about our dock crossing his land. Sandra, this is crazy. We have to fight this. Ray, or we could try listening for once. Just a thought. Tom stared at Ray's message, knuckles whitening. He started typing, fingers flying. Tom, we are fighting this. I'm talking to legal. Do not engage with the ranch owner directly. If he contacts any of you, refer him to the board. We need to present a united front. Also, please do not post about this situation online. The last thing we need is outsiders misrepresenting what's happening. He hesitated, then added, and avoid conversations with county officials without board presence. We're not the villains here. He hit send. His own words echoed in his head. We're not the villains here. He wanted to believe that. He needed to believe that, because if he didn't, If he admitted, even for a moment, that what they'd done was rooted not in safety, but in fear and prejudice, the whole story he told himself about who he was would start to crack. He wasn't ready for that yet. Back at the ranch, midnight draped the lake in black glass. Malik stepped out onto his porch, wrapped in a jacket, breath fogging the air. Crickets chirped loud and insistent. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote yipped. The flags along his shore were just barely visible, tiny silhouettes against the glimmer of starlight on the water. He walked down toward them. The earth felt different under his feet now, not because it had changed, but because he had claimed it in a new way, not just legally, but mentally. For years, he'd carry a quiet fear that someone could still take this away. One bad call, one biased official, one misunderstanding with too much power behind it. That's all it would take. Today, for the first time, he'd watched the system acknowledge him. Not perfectly, not permanently, but enough to put stakes in the ground, literally and figuratively. He stopped at the water's edge. The lake stretched between him and a world that didn't want him this close. He picked up one of the little flags, turned it in his fingers. "So this is what a line looks like," he murmured. It wasn't much. Asinguai, a triangle of plastic. But it represented something they hadn't expected him to have. A limit. A point past which their assumptions couldn't go without consequence. He pushed the flag back into the mud, firmer this time. His phone buzzed one last time. A text from Ava. "Sleep well. Tomorrow we plan. They started this on their terms. We finish it on yours." Malik slipped the phone back into his pocket and stared across the water. Somewhere over there, in a big house with perfect landscaping, a man was probably pacing, fuming, insisting he was a hero of the story. Somewhere on that same side, another man, Ray, was lying awake, wondering how far he was willing to go to stand next to a stranger who had become a symbol of something bigger. And here, on this quiet shore, Malik felt a strange calm settle over him. He thought of his father again, of that tiny apartment, of late-night conversations lit by a flickering TV where men with suits argued about things that never seemed to trickle down to their block. "Land is the only thing they can't make more of, son." "Yeah," Malik whispered. "But respect? We can make more of that. We just have to fight for it."